Hello and welcome back to the Calm Curator. I'm grateful you're here with me tonight, wherever you are in the world. Maybe you've had one of those days where everything felt out of your control. Or perhaps you're seeking something, a way to navigate the chaos, a path through uncertainty, a kind of inner quiet that doesn't depend on outer circumstances. Before we begin, I'm curious what brought you here tonight. What are you hoping to find in the next hour? And as always, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. The comments are a gentle space for our community to connect, so please share what's on your mind. Tonight, we're going to explore something ancient that feels startlingly relevant. We're going to walk through the philosophy of Stoicism, not as some dusty academic subject, but as a living practice, a way of being in the world that was forged in chaos and refined through centuries of human struggle. By the time we're done, I hope you'll see it not as a set of rules, but as an invitation to a different kind of freedom. So settle in somewhere comfortable, take a slow breath, and let's begin this journey together. Close your eyes for a moment if you can, and imagine this: you've lost everything. Your ship has gone down in a storm, taking with it all your possessions, your wealth, your plans for the future. You wash up on a foreign shore with nothing but the clothes on your back and the thoughts in your head. What do you do? How do you begin again? This isn't just a thought experiment. This is exactly what happened to a man named Zeno around 300 BCE. He was a merchant from Citium, a city on the island of Cyprus. He'd been sailing with a cargo of purple dye expensive stuff, the kind that could make or break a merchant's fortune. And he lost it all in a shipwreck near the coast of Athens. Standing there on that beach, dripping wet, everything gone, Zeno had a choice. He could rage against fate, he could despair, he could give up. Or he could see this disaster as an opportunity, a chance to become something different than what he'd been. Zeno chose the third path. He walked into Athens with nothing, and he ended up at a bookshop. There he encountered the writings of Socrates and other philosophers, and something shifted inside him. He began to study with the philosophers of Athens, learning from multiple schools of thought, absorbing ideas about ethics, about the nature of the universe, about what it means to live well. Eventually, Zeno started teaching his own philosophy. He couldn't afford to rent a proper school building, so he taught in a painted colonnade, a stoa in Greek. His followers became known as Stoics. And what he taught them was born directly from his own experience of loss, that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can absolutely control how we respond. Think about that for a moment. Zeno could have spent the rest of his life bitter about that shipwreck, mourning his lost fortune. Instead, he used it as the foundation for a philosophy that would influence human thought for over 2,000 years. The disaster that destroyed his old life became the catalyst for creating something far more valuable than purple dye. This is the essence of Stoicism, not denying that bad things happen, not pretending everything is fine, but recognizing that within every circumstance, no matter how difficult, there's space for us to choose our response. There's a kind of freedom that comes from accepting what we cannot change and focusing our energy on what we can. But Zeno was just the beginning. Stoicism would evolve and deepen through the voices of other remarkable people, each bringing their own experience of hardship and resilience to the philosophy. Let me tell you about three of them. First, there's Seneca. Picture a man at the height of Roman power and wealth, advisor to emperors, one of the richest men in Rome, a brilliant writer and thinker. But also picture this. A man who was exiled twice, who survived plots and political intrigues, who watched friends die, who lived under the shadow of Nero, one of history's most unstable rulers. Seneca knew luxury, but he also knew how quickly it could all disappear. Seneca wrote letters and essays that read like conversations with a trusted friend. He didn't write in abstract philosophical language, but in direct, practical advice about how to live. How to deal with anger, how to face death without fear, how to find peace in a chaotic world. He wrote as someone who knew that philosophy wasn't just for debate, it was for survival, for maintaining your humanity when everything around you was falling apart. In the end, Nero ordered Seneca to commit suicide, a common fate for those who fell out of favor with Roman emperors. And Seneca faced his death with the calm he'd spent his life cultivating, discussing philosophy with his friends until the very end. His life and death became a testament to the ideas he'd taught. Then there's Epictetus, and his story is completely different. Where Seneca had wealth and power, Epictetus had neither. He was born a slave. His very name, Epictetus, means acquired one, property, not a person. He was owned, worked hard labor, was injured in ways that left him with a permanent limp. But somehow his owner allowed him to study philosophy. And what Epictetus learned transformed him. Even as a slave, he realized something profound. They could chain his body, but they couldn't touch his mind. They could control his circumstances, but not his thoughts, not his character, not his inner freedom. He had no power over his external condition, but complete power over his internal state. Eventually, Epictetus was freed and became a teacher. Students came from across the Roman Empire to hear him speak. He didn't write books himself, he didn't need to. His words were so powerful that his students wrote them down, preserving teachings that would echo through centuries. A slave who became one of the most influential philosophers of his time, teaching that true freedom has nothing to do with your circumstances and everything to do with your mind. And then there's Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king. Imagine being the most powerful man in the world, emperor of Rome at its height, commander of armies, ruler of territories stretching from Britain to the Middle East. You would think such a man had everything, controlled everything. But Marcus Aurelius knew better. He spent much of his reign fighting wars on the frontiers, dealing with plagues, managing betrayals, watching his children die. He had all the power in the world, and yet he couldn't stop his wife from dying, couldn't prevent his son from becoming a terrible emperor, couldn't make the empire last forever no matter how hard he tried. So at night, in his tent on military campaigns, he wrote to himself. Not for publication, these were private meditations, reminders of Stoic principles to help him get through the next day. He reminded himself that he couldn't control events, only his responses, that everything passes, that what matters is doing your duty with integrity, treating people with kindness, accepting what comes with grace. These private notes were found after his death and published as Meditations, one of the most profound works of philosophy ever written, all the more powerful because it wasn't meant for anyone else to read. It was just a man, even an emperor, trying to remember how to be good, how to stay sane, how to keep going when everything was hard. 3 different men, a merchant who lost everything, a slave who gained wisdom, an emperor who had everything but peace. And all 3 found in Stoicism a way to navigate their vastly different circumstances with dignity and purpose. So what exactly did they teach? What is this philosophy that could speak to such different lives? At its heart, Stoicism is built on a few simple but profound ideas. Let's walk through them together slowly, giving each one space to breathe. The first and most important concept is what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control. It sounds complicated, but it's actually beautifully simple. There are things you can control and things you cannot. Wisdom lies in knowing the difference and focusing your energy accordingly. Think about your day-to-day. You couldn't control the weather. You couldn't control whether traffic was bad. You couldn't control what other people said or did. You couldn't control whether you got sick, whether a package arrived on time, whether your plans worked out exactly as you hoped. So much of what happens to us is completely outside our control. But here's what you could control: your effort, your attitude, how you responded when things didn't go your way, whether you were kind to someone who annoyed you, whether you kept your commitments, the quality of your work, your honesty, your patience, your thoughts about what happened. The Stoics believed, and this is crucial, that all our suffering comes from confusing these 2 categories. We exhaust ourselves trying to control things we cannot control, and we neglect the one thing we can: our own mind, our own character, our own responses. Imagine you're stuck in traffic. You cannot control the traffic. Getting angry about it, honking your horn, cursing, none of that changes the traffic. All it does is poison your own mind, ruin your own peace. But you can control whether you use that time to listen to something interesting, to breathe deeply, to accept the situation with grace. Same circumstance, completely different experience. Or imagine someone criticizes you unfairly. You cannot control what they think or say, but you can control whether you let it devastate you, whether you respond with anger or wisdom, whether you use it as an opportunity to examine yourself honestly or just dismiss it if it's truly unjust. This distinction between what's up to us and what's not up to us is the foundation of everything else in Stoicism. Master this, and you've learned the secret to peace of mind. The second key idea is virtue. And by virtue, the Stoics didn't mean being boring or prudish or holier than thou. They meant something specific: living according to wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. These 4 cardinal virtues were, for the Stoics, the only things of real value. Think about what we usually chase in life: money, status, pleasure, comfort, recognition, success. The Stoics would say these things are preferred indifference. Sure, it's nice to have them, but they're not what makes life good or bad. You can have all of them and be miserable. You can have none of them and be content. What actually matters is your character. Are you wise? Do you see things clearly, make good decisions, learn from experience? Do you treat people fairly, give credit where it's due, stand up for what's right? Are you courageous? Do you face your fears? Do what needs to be done even when it's hard, speak truth even when it costs you? Are you moderate? Do you have self-control, balance, the ability to enjoy things without being enslaved by them? These qualities can never be taken from you. Seneca could lose his wealth, but not his wisdom. Epictetus could be enslaved, but not lose his integrity. Marcus Aurelius could watch his empire crumble, but still maintain his character. Virtue is the only thing that's truly yours, truly under your control. And here's the beautiful part: virtue is its own reward. Being a good person doesn't require external validation or success. The act of living with integrity, of facing challenges with courage, of treating others with kindness, these things make life meaningful regardless of the outcome. The third major concept is nature and fate. The Stoics believed that the universe operates according to rational principles, that there's an order to things, a logos, a kind of cosmic reason. They believed we're part of this larger whole, and that living well means aligning ourselves with nature, both human nature and the nature of the universe. This doesn't mean passivity, it means understanding what's natural and what's not. It's natural to feel emotions, anger, fear, grief, joy. What's not natural is being controlled by them, letting them dictate your actions. It's natural to desire things, comfort, connection, pleasure. What's not natural is thinking these things will make you happy, that getting them will solve your problems. The Stoics talked about amor fati, love of fate. Not just accepting what happens, but actually embracing it, seeing every circumstance as exactly what you needed for your development. The traffic jam that teaches patience. The criticism that reveals a blind spot. The loss that shows you what really matters. The difficulty that develops strength. This doesn't mean bad things are secretly good. It means that since they're going to happen anyway, we might as well use them for growth rather than being destroyed by them. It means recognizing that you needed exactly this obstacle to become who you're meant to be. And finally, there's the emphasis on reason and perspective. The Stoics believed that most of our distress comes not from events themselves, but from our judgments about events. As Epictetus said, it's not things that disturb us, but our opinions about things. Someone cuts you off in traffic, that's just a car changing lanes. It only becomes an outrage, an insult, a ruining of your day if you judge it that way. You lose your job, that's just a change in employment status. It only becomes a catastrophe, a personal failure, a disaster if you interpret it that way. The Stoics practiced examining their judgments, questioning their automatic reactions, looking at situations from different angles. They asked themselves, is this as bad as I think? Will this matter in a year, in 10 years? Am I seeing this clearly or through the distortion of fear or desire? This isn't about positive thinking or pretending everything's fine. It's about seeing reality accurately, without the layers of drama and catastrophizing we usually add. Most of the time, when we look honestly at what's actually happening versus what we're afraid it means, the situation becomes more manageable. So those are the core ideas. Focus on what you control, cultivate virtue, align with nature, examine your judgments. Simple concepts, but living them, that's the practice of a lifetime. And practice is exactly what the Stoics emphasized. This wasn't meant to be just theory, just ideas to discuss. It was meant to be lived, practiced daily, integrated into every moment. Let me walk you through some of the exercises they used, practices you could start today. The first is morning reflection. The Stoics would begin each day by preparing themselves mentally for what might come, not worrying but rehearsing. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself, today I will meet people who are busy, ungrateful, angry, deceitful. But I won't be surprised or disturbed because I know that such people exist. I cannot control them, but I can control my response. Take a moment now and think about your day tomorrow. What challenges might you face? What difficulties? Instead of hoping everything goes smoothly, which gives fate all the power, imagine that things might go wrong. Imagine delays, disappointments, frustrations, not to be pessimistic, but to be prepared. To remind yourself that you can handle whatever comes, that your peace doesn't depend on everything going perfectly. The The second practice is what's called negative visualization. This sounds dark, but it's actually incredibly freeing. The Stoics would regularly imagine losing the things they valued. Not to be morbid, but to remember that everything is temporary, on loan, could be taken away at any moment. Imagine that someone you love was no longer here tomorrow. Not to torture yourself, but to remember not to take them for granted today, to appreciate this moment you have with them, to let go of petty grievances, to say what matters while you can. Imagine your health failing, your comforts disappearing, your plans falling apart. Not because these things will necessarily happen, but because they might. And when you vividly imagine losing something, then return to having it, it becomes precious again. The water tastes sweeter when you remember what thirst feels like. The warm bed feels like luxury when you imagine sleeping on stone. This practice also prepares you. If you've mentally rehearsed loss, you're not blindsided when it comes. You've already done some of the work of acceptance. The Stoics believed that we suffer most when we're caught off guard, when we thought we had guarantees that didn't exist. The third practice is evening reflection or journaling. At day's end, the Stoics would review what happened, not to beat themselves up, but to learn. Where did I respond well today? Where did I lose my temper, act from fear, fail to live up to my principles? What could I do better tomorrow? Seneca wrote letters to his friend Lucilius doing exactly this, examining his day, his reactions, his progress in philosophy. Marcus Aurelius filled notebooks with reminders to himself, corrections of his thinking, observations about his own character. Not because they were failures, but because they understood that becoming better is a daily practice, requiring honest self-examination. You could do this too, just a few minutes before sleep, reviewing your day. Not harshly judging yourself, but honestly observing. Where were you your best self? Where did you slip? What did you learn? What will you try to do differently tomorrow? This simple practice, done consistently, changes you over time. The fourth practice is what we might now call mindfulness, though the Stoics wouldn't have used that word. They practiced staying present, paying attention, not letting their minds race ahead to worries about the future or get stuck in regrets about the past. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That power over your mind starts with noticing where your attention goes. Are you here now in this moment? Or are you somewhere else lost in thought? Right now, as you listen to this, where is your attention? Are you fully here? Or is part of your mind already planning tomorrow, replaying earlier today, worrying about something that hasn't happened yet? The Stoics would gently call that attention back over and over to this moment, which is the only one you actually inhabit, the only one where you can act. Another practice they used was voluntary discomfort. Seneca would occasionally sleep on a hard floor, eat simple food, go without comforts he could easily afford. Not to punish himself, but to remember that he didn't need luxury to be content, that he could handle hardship if it came. To break the subtle tyranny of comfort, which can make us soft, fearful of any difficulty, you might try something similar, take a cold shower, fast for a day, go for a long walk in uncomfortable weather. Not to suffer, but to prove to yourself that you're tougher than you think, that discomfort is manageable, even sometimes clarifying. To remember that humans are incredibly adaptable, that we don't need as much as we think we do. The Stoics also practiced what they called premeditation of adversity, which overlaps with negative visualization but extends further. They would imagine specific difficulties they might face and rehearse how they would respond. If I lose my wealth, I will remember that I still have my character. If I face illness, I will bear it with courage. If someone betrays me, I will remember that I cannot control others, only my response. This isn't pessimism. It's preparation. Athletes visualize their performance before competition. Stoics visualized challenges before life threw them. Both understood that mental rehearsal builds capacity, creates neural pathways, makes the actual event more manageable when it arrives. And perhaps most importantly, the Stoics practiced memento mori, remembering death. They would keep reminders of mortality nearby, not to be morbid but to maintain perspective. If you truly understood that your time is limited, that someday, maybe soon, maybe far off, but someday, you won't be here, how would you live differently today? Would you waste time on petty concerns? Would you hold on to grudges? Would you delay saying what matters? Would you live by someone else's values instead of your own? Death is the ultimate thing outside your control, and paradoxically, remembering it gives you freedom to live fully now. These practices weren't meant to be grim or austere. They were meant to be liberating, to free you from the tyranny of circumstances, from the need for everything to go your way, from the fear that gave external things power over your peace. Through practice, the Stoics built resilience, clarity, freedom. Now, let's step back and look at how Stoicism influenced history, how it moved beyond ancient Athens and Rome to shape cultures and thinkers across centuries. Stoicism wasn't just a philosophy for individuals, it became woven into the fabric of Roman culture, especially among leaders and thinkers. The idea that a leader should be guided by reason rather than passion, should serve duty rather than personal gain, should face adversity with calm strength, these Stoic ideals shaped Roman governance at its best. When Christianity emerged, early Christian thinkers encountered Stoicism, and you can see the influence clearly. The emphasis on virtue over pleasure, on accepting God's will, on enduring suffering with patience, on being in the world but not of it, these ideas resonate with Stoic teaching. Many early Christian philosophers had studied Stoic texts, and the overlap is more than coincidental. Through the medieval period, Stoic ideas persisted in monasteries and universities, often absorbed into Christian theology. The notion of accepting hardship as God's plan, of controlling your passions through reason, of living according to a rational divine order, these are as much Stoic as Christian. When the Renaissance arrived and classical texts were rediscovered, Stoicism came back with renewed force. Thinkers encountered Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius afresh, and found in them practical wisdom for navigating their own turbulent times. The Stoic ideal of the rational, self-controlled individual pursuing virtue influenced Renaissance humanism profoundly. Moving forward, Stoic ideas shaped the Enlightenment. The emphasis on reason, on natural law, on the inherent dignity of all rational beings, you can trace these directly to Stoic roots. Philosophers like Spinoza, though not explicitly Stoic, developed systems that parallel Stoic thought remarkably. The founding fathers of America read Stoic philosophy. George Washington kept a copy of Seneca with him. Thomas Jefferson admired Epictetus. The Stoic ideal of the citizen who serves the Republic, who values duty and virtue over personal gain, who faces adversity with resolve, this shaped the revolutionary generation's self-understanding. In more recent history, Stoicism has influenced figures facing extreme hardship. Viktor Frankl, in Nazi concentration camps, independently arrived at conclusions remarkably similar to Stoicism, that humans have the freedom to choose their attitude even when all external freedoms are stripped away. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, echoes Epictetus across centuries. Admiral James Stockdale, held as a prisoner of war in Vietnam for 7 years, credited Epictetus with helping him survive torture and isolation. He realized that his captors could hurt his body but couldn't touch his mind unless he let them. The Stoic distinction between what we control and what we don't gave him a framework for endurance. Nelson Mandela, during his decades of imprisonment, found strength in Stoic ideas, in the notion that they could confine his body but not his spirit, that he could choose his response to suffering, that he could emerge with his character intact rather than broken or embittered. These aren't just historical curiosities. They're proof that Stoic philosophy works when tested under the most extreme conditions. It's easy to be calm when everything is going well. The real test comes in hardship, and that's where Stoicism shows its value. But why, you might wonder, is Stoicism experiencing such a revival now? Why are so many people in the 21st century discovering or rediscovering this ancient philosophy? Look at our current moment. We live in a time of overwhelming information, constant connectivity, endless demands on our attention. We face anxiety about things we cannot control: the economy, politics, climate, health, the future. We're bombarded with messages telling us we need more, should be more, aren't enough as we are. We live in what's been called the age of anxiety, where despite unprecedented material comfort for many, happiness seems more elusive than ever. Depression and anxiety disorders are epidemic. People report feeling overwhelmed, powerless, exhausted by trying to control things that cannot be controlled. Enter Stoicism, offering tools that are as relevant now as they were 2,000 years ago. Maybe more relevant because our current challenges play perfectly into Stoic insights. The internet and social media give us the illusion of control while actually removing it. We can curate our feeds, but we can't control what others post, what goes viral, how people react. We can share our opinions, but we can't control whether they're accepted or attacked. The digital world is almost perfectly designed to violate the Stoic principle of focusing only on what's under our control. But Stoicism offers a way through. It reminds us that we don't need to read every tweet, respond to every comment, stay current with every controversy. That what matters is not what others think of us, but what we actually are. That we can disconnect, can choose where to place our attention, can remember that social media reactions are not reality. Modern consumer culture tells us that happiness comes from acquisition, from getting more, better, newer things. But the hedonic treadmill is real. We adapt to what we have and always want more. Stoicism offers a radical alternative. That happiness comes not from getting what you want, but from wanting what you have, from appreciating what's already here, from cultivating inner richness rather than chasing external additions. The Stoic practice of negative visualization is particularly powerful in a culture of endless consumption. When you regularly imagine losing what you have, you break the spell of taking things for granted. The old car you were about to replace suddenly seems perfectly fine. The house that felt too small becomes adequate. The ordinary becomes precious when you remember it's not permanent. In a time when we're constantly told our worth depends on our achievements, our status, our influence, Stoicism reminds us that our worth is intrinsic, that virtue is its own reward, that no external validation can add to or subtract from your fundamental dignity as a rational being. This is deeply countercultural and deeply liberating. Modern life also throws constant small frustrations at us: tech that doesn't work, traffic, delays, other people's incompetence or rudeness. We can go through our days in a state of low-grade irritation, letting every small thing bother us. Stoicism offers a different approach. These things don't matter, they're not worth your peace. Focus on what actually matters and let the rest go. The Stoic distinction between what we control and don't control is particularly relevant in our age of information overload and global awareness. We know about every tragedy, every injustice, every problem everywhere in the world. It's overwhelming. We feel we should care about everything, do something about everything, and then feel guilty and helpless when we can't. Stoicism would say, you cannot fix everything, you cannot control global events, but you can control your own actions, your own integrity, your own sphere of influence. Do what you can where you are with what you have, accept that this is enough. Stop torturing yourself over problems you cannot solve. This isn't apathy. The Stoics were often deeply involved in public life, trying to make things better, but they didn't let their peace depend on outcomes they couldn't control. They did their duty and accepted results with equanimity. This is the balance modern people desperately need, to care and act without being destroyed by all we cannot fix. Stoicism is also experiencing revival because it's practical. It's not asking you to believe in specific deities or metaphysical claims. It's offering concrete practices that work regardless of your religious or philosophical beliefs. Morning reflection, journaling, examining your judgments, focusing on what you control. These things help whether you're religious or secular, Eastern or Western, young or old. And it's experiencing revival because it offers hope without requiring that everything work out. Modern self-help often promises that if you think positively enough, work hard enough, believe strongly enough, you'll get what you want. Then when you don't, you feel like a failure. Stoicism says, do your best and accept the outcome. The goal is to be a good person, not to have everything go your way. The goal is peace, not success. This is both more realistic and more achievable. People are also drawn to Stoicism's emphasis on resilience. We know we'll face hardship, loss, failure, disappointment, illness, death. Modern culture often pretends we can avoid these things or that we're broken if we can't handle them perfectly. Stoicism says, hardship is guaranteed. Here's how to face it with dignity. Here's how to emerge stronger. Here's how to find meaning in difficulty rather than being destroyed by it. There's something deeply reassuring about a philosophy that was developed by people facing real hardship, exile, slavery, war, political instability, personal loss. They weren't writing from comfort and privilege about how to live well. They were figuring out how to maintain their humanity under pressure. That's why their insights still resonate. And perhaps people are drawn to Stoicism now because it offers an alternative to both toxic positivity and despairing nihilism. It doesn't promise everything will be fine, but it doesn't say nothing matters either. It says, life is difficult, but you can face it with courage. You cannot control circumstances, but you can control your character. There is meaning to be found in virtue, in duty, in living with integrity regardless of results. This middle path, accepting reality while refusing to be defeated by it, feels right for our times. It's honest about difficulty while offering genuine hope. Not hope that everything will work out, but hope that you can handle whatever comes, that you can live meaningfully even in hard times, that your peace doesn't depend on circumstances. So here we are, 2,000 years after Zeno washed up on that beach, and his philosophy is more relevant than ever. The external circumstances have changed dramatically, but human nature hasn't. We still struggle with the same fundamental challenges: how to face hardship, how to find peace, how to live with purpose, how to handle loss and disappointment, how to be good when it's difficult. Let's bring this journey to a close with some final reflections on what Stoicism offers us today. The Stoics weren't promising a life free from difficulty. They were offering something different. A way to maintain your center regardless of what happens around you. A kind of inner citadel, as Marcus Aurelius called it, that remains untouched by external storms. Think about what that means practically. It means you can be at peace even when things aren't going your way. It means your happiness doesn't depend on other people behaving as you'd like. It means you can face uncertainty without being consumed by anxiety. It means you can lose things without losing yourself. This is freedom, not freedom from difficulty, but freedom within it. Not the freedom to control circumstances, but freedom from needing to. The freedom that comes from knowing who you are, what matters, what's truly yours. The Stoics understood something we often forget: life is short, brutally, beautifully short, and we waste so much of it on things that don't matter. We waste it being angry at traffic, bitter about old grievances, worried about what might happen, trying to impress people who don't matter, chasing things that won't satisfy us, avoiding discomfort that would make us stronger. What if you lived as if your time was limited? Because it is. What if you treated each day as precious? Because it is. What if you focused on what actually matters: being good, being present, being grateful, being kind, being courageous, and let the rest go? This is what the Stoics mean by living according to nature. Not primitive life, but life aligned with what's truly important. Humans are rational and social creatures. We flourish when we think clearly and live in good relationship with others. We suffer when we're confused and isolated. The Stoic path is toward clarity and connection, toward wisdom and community, but it starts with acceptance. Accepting that you cannot control most of what happens. Accepting that loss is inevitable. Accepting that people will disappoint you, that plans will fail, that nothing is guaranteed. This acceptance isn't defeat, it's reality. And once you accept reality, you can stop fighting it and start working with it. Acceptance doesn't mean passivity. The Stoics were active in the world, trying to make things better, but they didn't tie their peace to outcomes. They did what seemed right and accepted results without being destroyed by failure or inflated by success. This is the balance we need: full engagement without attachment to outcomes. The Stoic path is also about perspective. When you're lost in a problem, it seems enormous, all-consuming, but zoom out. Will this matter in a year, in 10 years, in 100? You are one person among billions, alive for a brief moment in cosmic time. This could make life seem meaningless, but the Stoics saw it differently. If your time is limited, it's precious. If you're small, you're free from the burden of being important. If nothing lasts, you'd better appreciate it while it's here. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, kept reminding himself how small he was, how temporary his power, how foolish it would be to take himself too seriously. This wasn't low self-esteem, it was perspective, humility, the wisdom that comes from seeing yourself accurately. The Stoic path is ultimately about virtue being good for its own sake, regardless of reward. In a world that constantly asks, "What's in it for me?" this is radical. Being honest even when lying would be easier. Being kind even when people don't deserve it. Doing your duty even when no one's watching. Maintaining your integrity even when it costs you. Why? Because that's what it means to be human at our best. Because virtue is its own reward. Because you have to live with yourself and you want that self to be someone you respect. Because integrity isn't something you have or don't have, it's something you practice or lose every day in small choices. The Stoics believed that all the things we usually chase, money, status, pleasure, recognition, are ultimately empty. They might bring temporary satisfaction, but they don't bring lasting peace. Only virtue does that. Only living according to your principles, being true to yourself, developing your character that brings the kind of satisfaction that lasts. This is challenging in a culture that measures everything by external metrics, but it's also freeing. If virtue is what matters, you can pursue it right now, whatever your circumstances. You don't need permission, don't need resources, don't need to wait for conditions to be right. You can be courageous today, honest today, kind today, wise today. And finally, the Stoic path is about the present moment. Not the past, which is gone and cannot be changed. Not the future, which hasn't arrived and may not come. But now, this moment, which is where life actually happens. How much time do we lose dwelling on past mistakes or worrying about future problems? How often are we anywhere but here? The Stoics would say, bring your attention back. This moment is where your power is. This moment is all you actually have. Be fully here. This doesn't mean don't plan or don't learn from experience. It means don't live anywhere but now. Make plans, then return to the present. Learn from the past, then return to the present. The present is where you can act, where you can choose, where life unfolds. As we come to the end of our journey through Stoicism, I want you to consider what you might take from this. Not as a complete philosophy you must adopt wholesale, but as tools you can use, perspectives that might help. Maybe it's the simple reminder to focus on what you control. When you feel overwhelmed this week, pause and ask, what here is actually up to me? Let go of the rest, even temporarily. See how that feels. Maybe it's the practice of morning reflection. Before you start tomorrow, take 5 minutes to prepare yourself mentally. What challenges might come? How do you want to respond? Who do you want to be regardless of what happens? Maybe it's negative visualization. Once a day, imagine briefly losing something you value. Then return to having it and notice if it feels different, precious, worthy of gratitude. Maybe it's the evening review. Before sleep, honestly examine your day. Where were you your best self? Where did you fall short? What did you learn? No judgment, just observation and gentle course correction. Maybe it's just the reminder that you're stronger than you think, that you can handle difficulty, that your peace doesn't depend on everything going perfectly, that you have an inner citadel that cannot be touched unless you allow it. The Stoics weren't perfect. They were humans struggling with the same things we struggle with, but they developed tools that worked for them and have worked for countless people since. Not because Stoicism makes life easy, but because it makes difficulty bearable. Not because it promises happiness, but because it shows you can be at peace even when you're not happy. Zeno lost everything in that shipwreck and found something better. Epictetus was enslaved and discovered freedom. Seneca had everything and learned what actually mattered. Marcus Aurelius had all the power in the world and realized he couldn't control what mattered most. Each of them, through hardship, found wisdom. You don't need to wait for disaster to find it too. You can start practicing now while things are relatively calm so you're prepared when storms come, because they will come. Life guarantees difficulty, but it also offers you the capacity to face it with courage, grace, and even serenity. The Stoic path is not about becoming emotionless or indifferent. It's about becoming unshakable in what matters while letting go of what doesn't. It's about caring deeply about virtue while not being devastated by circumstances. It's about being fully engaged with life while not being at its mercy. It's a paradox, but one that works in practice even if it's hard to explain. You can care without being attached. You can try without needing to succeed. You can love without being destroyed by loss. You can face life fully while maintaining inner peace. This is what the Stoics discovered and what they're still teaching us across the centuries, that within you is everything you need to face whatever comes. That your power lies not in controlling the world, but in governing yourself. That virtue is both the path and the destination. That peace comes not from perfect circumstances, but from perfect acceptance of imperfect ones. So as you go forward from this moment, remember, you are capable of more than you know. You can handle more than you think. Your peace is available right now, not dependent on anything changing. Your character is always being forged in small choices in how you respond to ordinary moments. The Stoics would say, life is short, so don't waste it. But also, each moment is complete in itself, so be fully here. Work toward the future, but don't live there. Learn from the past, but don't dwell there. Be here now, meeting this moment with all you have. This is the quiet strength that Stoicism offers. Not the strength that comes from never being challenged, but the strength that comes from knowing you can face challenges. Not the peace that depends on everything going right, but the peace that persists regardless. Not the happiness that comes from getting what you want, but the contentment that comes from wanting what you have. And maybe most importantly, the freedom that comes from realizing that you've always had a choice. Not a choice about what happens to you, but a choice about who you are in response to what happens. That choice, that space between stimulus and response, is where your power lives. That's where you're free. The ancient Stoics discovered this freedom in circumstances we can barely imagine: war, slavery, political turmoil, personal tragedy. They tested these ideas under pressure and found them solid. The philosophy survived and spread because it worked, because it gave people a way to maintain their humanity when everything else was stripped away. You probably won't face such extreme circumstances, but you'll face your own challenges. And when you do, you'll have a choice. You can resist reality, exhaust yourself fighting what you cannot change, let circumstances dictate you're in a state. Or you can accept what is, focus on what you can control, and maintain your center regardless of the storm. This is what Stoicism offers, not a promise that life will be easy, but a path through difficulty. Not a guarantee of happiness, but a method for peace. Not control over the world, but mastery of yourself. And that, the Stoics would say, is more than enough. So take a deep breath, feel yourself here now in this moment. Whatever happened today, whatever's coming tomorrow, right now you're okay. Right now you can choose. Right now you can be who you want to be. This moment, always this moment, is where your life happens. The Stoics discovered something profound, that peace isn't a destination you reach when everything finally works out. It's available now in any circumstance if you choose it. Not through denial or delusion, but through acceptance, perspective, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing what matters. You've walked with me through ancient Athens, through the lives of extraordinary people, through ideas that have survived millennia. But the real journey is just beginning. It's the journey of living these ideas, testing them, making them yours. It's the journey of becoming who you're capable of being, one choice at a time. And here's what I hope you take away: you have everything you need. Not to control what happens, but to face it. Not to never struggle, but to struggle well. Not to avoid difficulty, but to grow through it. The Stoics proved this is possible. Countless people since have proved it. Now it's your turn to discover it for yourself. Thank you for walking this path with me tonight. If something here resonated with you, if you found a tool or perspective that might help, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Share your thoughts, your struggles, your insights. We're all on this journey together, trying to live well in difficult times. And if you're interested in more of these quiet explorations of ideas that have shaped human thought, subscribe to the Calm Curator. We'll keep walking together through history, philosophy, and the timeless questions of how to live. Until next time, remember, you are capable, you are enough, you have within you the strength to face whatever comes. Not because nothing bad will happen, but because you can choose how you meet it. That choice, that freedom is yours, always has been, always will be. Take care of yourself, be kind to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, try one small Stoic practice this week. See what happens, see how it feels. The ancient wisdom is waiting for you to test it, to make it your own, to discover what the Stoics knew. That peace is possible, that virtue is its own reward, that you are far stronger than you imagine. Good night, and thank you for being part of this community. May you find the quiet strength within you, and may it guide you through whatever comes.